You're watching the Hunt Suburbia podcast. We've got a great show ahead, but first, a quick message from our sponsors. Come meet and learn from the best hunters in the Northeast this summer at Huntstock, America's reinvented hunting show. Taking place August 11th through the 13th at Wildwood Farm in Westminster, Massachusetts, you can expect 3 days of hunters and brands coming together to celebrate hunting, meeting and learning from legendary hunters, winning prizes from our over $30,000 worth of giveaways, featuring more than 7 guns, by the way, bows, arrows, tree stands, saddles, camo apparel, grills, optics, and much more, and having the best time that you've ever had at a hunting show guaranteed. All ticket purchases to Huntstock come with a door prize entry to win some of those awesome door prize giveaways, which we'll draw at the end of each day. Kids under 12 are free. It's a family event, so bring your kids. For adults, it's $40 per day, or you can get a 3-day pass for $80, or you can get a 3-day super pass for $150, which will get you entry all 3 days, unlimited 3D archery, and double the door prize entries. For trackers and fans of the Benoit family, we're happy to announce that Woodman Arms has partnered with the Benoits to reproduce their legendary DVD series, which will be available for the first time at Huntstock this summer. They are likely to sell out, so make sure you get your tickets to Huntstock so you can get your hands on those DVDs before they're gone. If they don't sell out, they'll be available online at woodmanarms.com. With hunters from all generations at Huntstock like Lanny Benoit, Hal Blood, Jim Massett, Joe Donito, Rodney Elmer, and John Altman, all the way down to younger killers like John Lewis, Brett Joy, Neil Pendleton, Jake Bennett, Joey Davis, Isaac Young, Pat Burns, and hunting groups like Big Woods Bucks, Just Hunt Club, Mountain Deer, 80K Trackers, Northwoods Whitetails, Hunting Me, Hunt Suburbia, Stagger, and more. There's not a better show in the world to meet and learn from hunters of all age groups. And with a 3D archery course designed to give you real-life hunting scenarios, 50-plus hours of simultaneous seminars and live podcast programming on multiple stages, an outdoor classroom where you can learn from legends in an intimate setting, immersive experiences like following a blood tracking dog as he tracks down a deer, or learning how to butcher a deer, or getting up into a tree saddle for the first time and trying out different types of stands. Over 80-plus sponsors from the hunting world displaying and selling their new gear, and top brands that the Northeast has not seen around in a long time, like Vortex, Kuiu, Mossberg, Sig Sauer, Ruger, Darn Tough Vermont, Delta Mackenzie, Hoyt, Easton, and more. You do not want to miss this show. You can get your tickets at www.huntstockevents.com today, or you can get them at the door if we don't sell out. So this summer, we'll see you at Huntstock.
The Johnny King deer should be the world record deer as far as I'm concerned. And based on score and the rules that we had at the time. But the politics got involved. And I don't know how deep to get into this here, but being dismissed by Boone Crockett bothered me at first, but I got over that. But I guess you could say I haven't got over not being friends with Milo anymore.
Today I sit down with Ron Bushey. He is a former Boone Crockett scorer who panel scored the Milo Hansen world record buck. He was good friends with Milo Hansen for many years after that, traveling the country with him as they went from show to show to display the magnificent buck that Milo shot in Saskatchewan, which became the world record. And there's stories of their great friendship along the way. And then comes in the Johnny King buck, which many believed to be the new world record typical buck. And there's some controversy around that. There's how Boone and Crockett made some judgments. Ron talks about what happened behind the scenes there a little bit, and how Boone and Crockett scores were told not to measure the King buck after they had made an official ruling, but Ron ended up doing that anyway, which led to him being fired by Boone and Crockett, and also led to the dissolution of his friendship with Milo Hansen. So we get into a lot of different stuff. Ron is a very interesting guy. He's had a crazy life in the whitetail world. He has measured some of the biggest bucks ever to be killed in the world, whitetails. From those two bucks that you see in the background here, the Milo Hansen buck, the Johnny King buck, the Fulton buck. He's measured just a ton of crazy deer. And he's full of knowledge, full of, background information from the industry. And he was just a joy to be around. So make sure that you listen through this whole podcast. It is quite long, but there's a lot of history in here. So make sure you listen to the whole thing. I promise it's a good one. Here we go. Let's get into it. Here is Ron Bushey. All right, we've got another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast, and I'm sitting here with a new friend of mine, Ron Bushey. How we doing, Ron?
I think I'm doing pretty good today.
Yep.
Well, I'm breathing and seeing daylight, so that's a good thing. How's that?
That's a beautiful thing. Any day you wake up like that, right?
I wake up that way every day, look out the window and see the daylight, and say, good. I do have a morning prayer, by the way. Can I just say that now?
Yeah,
I
please.
say, Lord, don't take me today. I'm not ready.
That's it.
That's it.
Hey, simple.
You know?
Gets to the point.
Yeah. So, because I got too much living I want to still do.
So far, he's listened to you.
Yeah. All that stuff, right? Yeah.
So you got a lot of living to do.
Yeah.
You say that you still feel like you're 35, right?
Yes. Oh, God. I'm 75 now, and I don't believe it, but I think I'm 35. Like, you're what, 36?
36, yeah.
So I think I'm equal to you or equal age or whatever, you know? And just, I don't know why, I have another saying. It's okay to get older, just don't get old. How's that?
That's a good one.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If you always feel young, I had a guy on the podcast a couple weeks ago, Larry Davis, Butch. You go Bushy.
Bushy.
He's Butch. And he's 84, and he said, he remembers being a young guy in his 30s. I think it was jogging down a pier, running down to the end of a fishing pier somewhere, and he thought to himself, and he remembered it ever since then. He goes, I wonder if I'll be able to do this. Like, how, if I'm 90, am I still going to be able to jog down the... And he wanted to make sure that he never lost that ability.
Yeah.
So that's that same mentality, right? It
is.
And he's very fit now, 84 years old, and he's super fit.
So, not get off subject here, but I ran the Boston Marathon 4 times and finished it. And that's part of my soul. And, I ran it years ago, 66, 67, before you were born, right?
A little bit before that, yeah.
And then in my older age. And I'd like to be able to run now, but for different reasons, I don't or can't run like I used to. But anyways.
Well, if you do, it goes right by my house, on my street.
Yes, in Ashland.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, can I say that? Or we get to edit that out?
No, of course.
Well, I don't know if you want people to know where you live or whatever. Well, a town's one thing, so... All right.
That's
I'm talking
fine.
Too much. You.
I do need to do the intro. I can't just say, "Hey, this is Ron Bushey." We got to give your accolades because Ron, you really are. You're humble, and you say that you feel like we talked about it a little bit before the cameras were rolling, but there's this imposter syndrome that I think a lot of people who get to the heights that you have in scoring and in the whitetail world, and as a writer, writing for North American Whitetail Magazine, writing for Big Bucks Magazine, and you scored, we're going to get into it later, but the Milo Hansen deer, the Johnny King deer, many other just world-class, top-of-the-line deer.
Yeah.
Probably the most renowned Boone and Crockett scorer in history, I would say. And
not me.
I would say, no?
Oh.
Who else has been able to say that, though?
Well, I look at Dave Bolin from Minnesota. Do you know Dave Bolin or of him?
Nope.
He's measured more Boone and Crockett deer than anybody alive. He's like 80-some odd years old. Friend of mine, he was here back in October. But he's very, very well known, very popular. We have different reputations for different things. Like he's, like I said, measured so many deer more than anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And he's been a measurer for I think 50 years. I was a Boone Crockett measurer for 26 years. It was part of my life, big part of my life. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes I put Boone Crockett measuring ahead of my family, which was not a good thing. And I didn't know I was doing it. So now that I'm not a measurer anymore, that's okay. I'm fine with that, you know. My kids are both grown up, and so I got a home that I love and enjoy, and I don't mind. I still measure. If people ask me to measure head form, I never refused anybody in my life. You know, I never said, "Oh, I don't have time for that" or this or that. I would ask them to come to my house because you don't get paid to be a measurer. In case I don't know if anybody knows that or doesn't know it. And it cost me money over the years to be a measurer, which I gladly did. You know, but, so I've been lucky. I'll tell you that. I think I'll tell you that. To be able to live in a little town in Vermont, yet to have been involved in or measured or some of the biggest, most historical deer of all time.
Yep.
And I got a list of people to give to you for you to do podcasts with. That would be good. Chuck Arnold in British Columbia, Jay Fish in Michigan, Keith Snyder in Ohio, maybe.
Hey, we're gonna have to fill out some
Brian Ross in Maine.
Some expense reports to go to those, but that is odd.
Well,
if we can get the business to pay for a trip to British Columbia, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful out there.
Chuck Arnold was the first antler collector with Fred Goodwin of all time. He's still living, obviously. But that guy used to own the Jordan Buck World Record, the Breen. Very historical name of deer. People maybe watching this here might know those names, but there are deer that have been taken years ago that have now become like the Jim Browns of football or the Tom Brady of football. Historical people from the past, everybody knows their name. And today, a lot of the big deer that are taken don't have that same moniker, if you would.
I agree with that. I know exactly what you're saying, too. It's, you know what it is? It's that these days, with the advent of social media, everybody is flooded with pictures of big bucks constantly, right? And the news cycle is refreshed every 6 hours, as opposed to back in the day, a story, something like the Hansen buck, right? That dominated for 15, 20 years, and it's still, it still is going to some extent today, right? But nowadays, people can forget about a big buck that was shot just like that. It's a different time.
You're 100% right, and it is a different time. Hunting has changed. Hunting has evolved. The way we hunt and where we hunt and how we hunt is all changing compared to the old days of going to deer camp, your favorite mountain or whatever, it's a whole different world. It's like anything. What's the same? Transportation's different. Sports are different. Politics is different. Well, politics is still a lot similar, just different names. But so the evolution of famous deer and deer hunters, you don't hear those names anymore. So let me ask you a question. Who's the most famous recent deer hunter, short of Dustin Huff, that you can name right now?
Most famous recent one.
Yeah.
You see, I always look at it differently. I don't think about, you've got Hal Blood is famous for tracking now, right? And his name is out there as and he's one of the best trackers in the world. And you got Lanny Benoit, but he hasn't been tracking recently.
Lanny
but
is
he's
probably
obviously
the best tracker ever.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You say, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, there's no interrupting this.
No, because Lanny, in my opinion, is probably, I've known Lanny for a number of years. I do think he might have been better than his father, Larry Benoit. And I say that because...
Oh, talk about technology.
Is that your phone?
Yes. It must have heard
You're gonna edit this out.
Some kind of a trigger word. I'm going to shut this off. How professional.
Years ago, Larry Benoit told me that Lanny was probably a better tracker than he was. Larry told me that himself. So, and if you know some, obviously, what his accomplishments are. He is a one of a kind. There are others who like to emulate, but will never duplicate. That's the way I look at it, you know. And Lanny's a humble guy now, or probably always was, but that freaking guy, he was unbelievable.
There's something about also being, like you said, probably the best tracker ever to live, reaching the pinnacle of something, and also having charisma to match it. You know, he can get into a room with anybody and make you feel like you've known him forever, and he's, you know, that's something special too that he's got.
Yeah. I think maybe we're getting off track here.
No. There's no off track in podcast.
Well, okay. So, yeah, you can edit whatever you want.
We don't edit it out either.
Oh.
Unless you really say something.
Well, I need duct tape for my mouth sometimes just to stop talking, period. But no, with Lanny in his older age, I think he's mellowed and has been more easy or easier to deal with a lot of other people. And when you're at the top of your field, whether you're a Tom Brady quarterback or a Babe Ruth baseball player, I'm sure there's always people that are trying to climb up and grab at you. And I think that might have been the case for Lanny and Larry. And not to get off track, but I knew Larry quite well. That's not the whole story, but yeah. So
we can talk about Larry. Well, I want to let the people know that are watching, though, we are going to get into your life journey, starting with the Hansen buck and how that changed your life too. We're going to get into that, but we can't skip over the Larry Benoit stories.
So I'm trying to think how the heck. I was going to say another word. I had to watch myself. And did I get involved with Larry? You know, Larry Benoit was probably the most famous deer tracker ever was, in modern times anyways. But he was never one interested in getting deer measured. That's the amazing thing about him.
Yeah.
He was always weight. That's all he cared about, the size of the deer, the body. And over the years, I remember when I used to go up to Larry's house in Duxbury, Vermont, when he was living. I even brought Milo Hanson with me one time up there. What a time that was. But I used to visit Larry, and we had nice conversations together, long, lengthy conversations. But I never tried to out-Larry is what I could say. And I never tried to push measuring on him. I never tried to impress him. I never tried to... You don't impress a Larry Benoit, you know. And I think he respected that. Because there was a lot of people that I think in the past I met Larry didn't know how to interact with him. And Larry's personality was very humble, but yet he knew what he could do. And if if a person that spoke with him at a show or something tried to make it sound like they were a great tracker, that would lose Larry's interest right there. You know, it was, I'm not sure. So, over the years, I was like the little, like I was saying to you earlier, I was the Indian and Larry was the chief. And I always remembered that step like that.
Well, you know something just interesting here. On the way up here, made some phone calls, and I checked in with Lanny, and I let him know that I'm coming up here, and I asked him how the deer tracking school is that. He just did that.
Grove.
Yeah, he just did it for the first time in a long time with Timmy Bolduc and Landon, and it was just we were talking about that, and he had a writer there from Meat Eater Network, which is the new age kind of. You know,
Meat Eater Network.
Meat Eater. So that's like, you know, they're the biggest in the world really now in terms of media and hunting media in the way that younger people consume it, right? So they were there to do a story on them. They stayed, you know, they did the school, participated all 3 days, and Lanny said, he goes, yeah, it was great. He goes, you know, at first the guy, he was a little shy, you know, walking, didn't quite know what to do, and he said the same thing you just said about his dad, where people don't really know how they get something built up in their mind, you know, that because of our name, that I am something that I don't feel like I am, but they get nervous around, people of status, right?
Yeah.
And he says it in the most humble way possible, but the way that you just described it. And what I've always learned too is just they don't want to be treated any differently than as if they didn't have that status. And that's with most famous people I've ever met in my life who have reached some level of status. If you just treat them the same way that you would treat your best friend, don't try to impress them, needle them every once in a while, make a joke. That's all people like that really want, and that makes them feel comfortable. And as soon as you start to say, "Oh, this is what I can do," or "This is what I did," or you know what I mean, that can turn people off.
Well, I was fortunate when I used to visit Larry. That was after I measured the Milo Hansen World Record deer and measured a lot of other big deer at Boone Crockett panel measuring, and had, through osmosis or whatever, developed a reputation, not a reputation, what's the word? Stuff I did just became known.
Yeah.
And I never tried to make that as anything when I'd visit Larry. And and I know I'll tell you this quick thing. Might have told you this before, I don't know. Tell me if I repeat myself.
Hey, these people haven't heard anything so even if you've said it to me, we want you to repeat yourself on
Well, one time years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I had written about Larry and his family in North American Whitetail magazine back in 94, 95, I forget. Anyways, and established a good report, Larry, then. And I remember one time in the middle of the winter, it was February, wicked snowstorm in Vermont, northern Vermont. And Saturday morning, and I said, geez, I think this would be a good time to go visit Larry. Well, it wasn't a good time because the roads were covered with snow. And I called Larry and I said, I'm thinking of coming up to visit you. Would this be a good time? And he said, oh, yeah, Ron, of course. What time are you going to be here? I said, oh, shit. Oh, oops. I'm sorry. I said, I don't know. The roads are bad, Larry. One thing about him, Larry Benoit, anybody might know this. If you told him something, you were going to do it or be there or do this, you better have done it. And I didn't want to get pinned down by what time I get there because I didn't know the roads are so bad. So I said to Larry, probably around noontime maybe. It's normally a 4-hour drive from my house to where he was.
Yep. On
good conditions. And so I didn't know what it would take. So I said maybe around noon, maybe before, maybe after. I said, I'll do my best. He said, okay, come on up. So I got up to his house around noontime, I don't remember, and he was fine. And we sat in his kitchen, at his kitchen table. Now his room where all his deer were and racks and stuff was off to the side. But Larry and I sat in that room in the kitchen. We drank more coffee, and we talked for over 7 hours. And it was mostly non-deer talk, believe it or not. It was just about life in general, family, religion, not politics, but just stuff, it seems like.
Yeah.
And at the end of the thing, Larry said to me, and I say this once in a while to a few people, he said, someday when I die, I want you to speak at my funeral. And I looked at him like, what the hell are you talking about? And he said, yeah, when people talk about you, and he said, you're good at that or something like that. And I said, oh. I'm thinking, here's Larry Benoit. I'm looking at him like he's a freaking god.
Yeah.
And I'm just this little puny guy, and he wants me to talk at his funeral. I didn't know how to handle that, And he did talk about his wife Iris passing away before him. Missed her dearly. Loved her. He was married for 63 years, I think it was. I went to his 60th wedding anniversary. And so when Iris passed away, that was traumatic for Larry. And he still had his boys and family and a house and hunting, but Iris was number one focus in his life. And he told me one time, he says, how did he say it? Something like, I'll be glad to see her again. Mm-hmm. And, geez, gave me chills then, give me chills now. But You know, sometimes when you're talking with someone at a point in time, you don't realize in 20, 30 years, when you look back at that time, what it's going to be like, how significant it was. And for me, that was like a historic time. For Larry Benoit to ask me to speak at his funeral. And, long story, I won't get into that other part. But, so I felt honored and privileged to know the guy, be honest with you. You know, it was just one of the people I met and it had nothing to do with measuring, you know. And I wasn't a writer, I was a builder. But I had a good relationship with Gordon Whittington at North American Whitetail. He wanted me to write about the Benoits. I wrote about the Benoit family, not just Larry Benoit. It was about the whole family.
Yep.
And that was somewhat the focus of the story. And it turned out pretty good, but I used to enjoy writing back then. I don't do writing anymore. I could possibly, but I just don't. I guess I'm getting lazy in my older age, probably.
You're busy, I think.
Well, busy, yeah. And so I got off the tangent on Larry Benoit too.
Well, what happened with the funeral? Did you speak at his funeral?
I did not go to the funeral. Boy, that's a long story, too complicated to explain now.
Let's talk about it a little bit.
So, I didn't want to, how can I put this tactfully? I didn't want to be an upsetting factor at the funeral. And I think there's a possibility I could have been.
Okay.
Because of my relationship with some of the boys. Mm-hmm. And I've said to Lanny recently, at one of our meetings him and I had, it must have been difficult being a member of that family, living with and competing with and part of a famous father like that. And Lanny had comments about that. And I can just imagine, you know, famous Larry Benoit, and here's his kids that are growing up, and they all have their own separate lanes that they're going in. And so I just didn't want to be a distraction to such an incredible event.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
I wound up not going. It hurt not to go, you know. But I did it out of more or less consideration for the whole family. Yep. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And you know what? You brought up another point that you and I have talked about a little bit on the phone. That is, when you've got a father that's achieved the pinnacle of something, like the Michael Jordans, right? We talk about it's very, very rare to get somebody like a Michael Jordan, a Tiger Woods, a Muhammad Ali, a Tom Brady, these guys who are clearly far and away the best icons. And then when they have children, it's got to be a weird thing, first of all, for the children, and then they most times are going to feel pressure to try to achieve the same level of greatness. And how can you achieve the same level of greatness that comes once in 1,000 years?
Those people you mentioned, it's impossible.
Right? How can you? So that's a lot of pressure, and it's never, as far as I know, really been done where the son can. Now, there's some opportunities right now, except for Lanny, right? Lanny has got as close to that, or maybe the only one who's ever been able to live up to that, and then also get to that level. I feel like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that, I think with hunting, that lends itself to, it's a type of activity that is different than, say, basketball or football or baseball or whatever. Because when you get to a certain age in those other sports, your physical ability goes down.
Yep.
But when you get to be 40 years old and you're a hunter, your father was, you can get better at it.
Oh, yeah.
So it was almost natural for the three boys, Lane, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, you know, they all had, and Shane, who's living in South Carolina now, I understand, who's had several health issues. Everybody had different personal expectations of themselves. Mm-hmm. And everybody wanted to be their own man. But how do you become your own man when Larry Benoit is your father?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep. So it just all ties in and makes sense because that you wouldn't want to feel like you were interfering on the funeral is what it sounds like, right? Even though
Correct.
Larry asked you to be there, it was probably a very heavy thing for their whole family.
So it was a tough thing for me to decide not to go. I could have gone and spoke, but I'm sure there were plenty of people there that I know that it turned out well. I went to Larry's, like I said, 60th wedding anniversary. I was part of his friendship. He liked me. He made me a knife. I tell you about my knife. Larry Benoit made famous knives. You probably know that.
Yep.
And he made me a knife one time. I traded him shed antlers that he used to use for his knife, handles for his knife. And he spelled my name incorrectly on the knife. He engraved it. He spelled it like it's pronounced, Bushey. But it's Boucher. It's Boucher, French name. But he always knew me as Bushey. So that was funny. And I've had the knife for many, many years. And I just gave it away to a friend of mine. And probably, can I say names?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So my friend Truman Young was a young fellow who used to work for me.
I played football against him, unless you're talking about his dad.
Truman is the father of Isaac Young.
Yep.
Isaac, who is his own personality and developing coming up. I gave them both the knife. Truman came over here one night and I said, I got something for you. And he couldn't believe I was giving him the knife. He said, what are you doing? I said, I want you to have it and later on pass it on to Isaac.
Yep.
And I said to him, I said, the only thing I'd ask is, when you kill a deer this year, assuming he would, I said, I want you to gut it out with this knife and take a picture of your deer and then have Isaac do the same thing.
Nice.
And then just give me a picture of that.
Yep.
That'll be fine for me.
That's great.
And because I wanted that symbolic knife that Larry gave me. I mean, I didn't pay a penny for it, and it was Larry's idea that we trade antlers for a knife.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want to see that lost to obscurity. So, I got a lot of stuff in that room that I don't know what's going to happen to it someday.
Well, this is something that keeps coming up over and over again as I'm having conversations with older hunters who have built a trophy room like that, so a memory room, whatever that people want to call it. It started with Connecticut Carl, who we talked about on the way in here. I did a podcast with him down at his spot, Carl Leeser, and it was kind of sad to me thinking he showed me how his room and how proud he is of everything. And we go through each memory in there, and he goes, when I die, I don't know what's going to happen to it. My kids aren't interested, and they're probably just going to have to sell it off. And that's a common thing now that and I don't know. It is kind of sad to me. And I end up grappling with how much of this do we really keep? Because then isn't that kind of, you don't know what's going to happen to it. There's so many great things in here.
That room over there is filled with 40 plus years of work, memories, everything. I try to straighten it out and clean it up, and I get sidetracked. I pick up a stack of pictures and I look at them and I say, oh, Jesus, remember that? So I've had people that said to me, someday when you die, I'd like to have this, I'd like to have that, I'd like to have this. And I'm thinking, I'm 75 now, my goal is to live to be 103.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell everybody, well, what are you going to give me when you die before me? They say, what? So, but part of the thing is, and this probably has nothing to do with it, I feel personally that if I start planning or making some kind of will or
you start the process.
I'm admitting the end is near, and I don't want to do that in my mind.
Well, because once you start doing that, then maybe the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? There is the thing in the world where if you start, you don't want to breathe that into the atmosphere, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think right now I want to stay as young looking as I can. Not that I can do a lot about that, but I see some people that are my age or younger that look incredibly decrepit or old.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, I don't want to get like that. No, really, I say, what am I going to do? You know, and I'm not what's the word, healthy, well.
Spring chicken?
Spring chicken. Although, can I say this? So I'll tell you. Well, you might know this, remember. Back in 2020, I had a heart attack in my truck. And that was in May. And then in July, I had 3 mini strokes. And then in September, I had open heart surgery, all within like 6 months. And as a result of the strokes and old age, I forget a lot of stuff. And so I consider myself pretty lucky that I'm still hanging around after going through all that during the COVID time, no less. So it gives me more incentive to want to, I'm not sure what the word is, to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I don't think...
Persevere.
Persevere.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of the old running in me, the marathon runner that I was. In high school, I was a distance runner. College, I ran cross country. Then I ran the Boston Marathons. And I used to... The last Boston Marathon I ran was in 2007. And I had a number. I have 2 unofficial Boston Marathon records, but I won't get into that. But in 2007 when I ran, it was my older age. My daughter ran the last 6 miles with me from Heartbreak Hill to the end. But my motto for that race was simple. Finish or die. One or the other. And I said I came close to both. Did one close to the other. And it was like my mental outlook was like, I got to finish this race no matter what. And I did. It took me quite a while to do it compared to when I was 30 years, 40 years younger, but I still finished it.
That's the old Spartan mentality, right? Come back with your shield or on it, they would say before they went to battle. The same thing. You got to give it your all. You better come back with that shield or you'll be dead on it, right? So
yeah,
it's
okay.
All or nothing.
Well, I used to enjoy pain, believe it or not. Not enjoy, but I endured it. I put up with it. You know, I'll get off track too much here. I'm sorry.
No, we're not. Keep going.
Well,
we don't have an end. We don't have an end time.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, I don't want to bore people watching this. They're going to say, enough of that bullshit. I've watched this guy long enough. You know, I ain't watching it no more. So, I'm sorry anybody who watches this.
No, they're trust me, you've got a lot of good stories and we're going to get to them all.
All right. Let you talk. I've been doing too much talking.
Okay, well, why don't we switch gears a little bit then, and I want to talk about, I know something that is a huge part of your life and that changed your life, and I know that you know you've got great feelings for Milo Hansen and the great memories of the time that you spent with him and the buck and all that. So why don't we can you tell the story about how did you come to meet Milo, score the deer, and just kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Does that thing got about 10 hours worth of tape on it or whatever?
It actually has 15 hours that can go.
15 hours, no problem. So, many years ago, I used to be an unofficial, if you would call lack of a better term, booking agent for on an Indian reservation in Saskatchewan. And that's a long story how that happened, but so I used to hunt in Saskatchewan years ago, still do. And as you can see in that room, the results of it. Yep. Oh, did I move that?
You're good.
Oh. And so I was a little familiar with Saskatchewan and the deer and Saskatoon, the airport and all. And then I knew some taxidermists in Battleford, which was near Saskatoon, and different things. And then I heard the news of this farmer who shot what they said was going to be a world record deer. My friend George Vinyl called me one night and said he just heard from his outfitter out in Montana that this guy Milo Hansen shot a deer that was going to be the new world record. And the news traveled non-internet days now, from Saskatchewan TV station down to Montana, over to Vermont, and from Vermont to Wallingford. And I was a Boone Crockett measure back then. And I remember thinking, farmer, Saskatchewan, he don't know squat about what he's got to do, what the process is. So I called a taxidermist I knew in Battleford and tried to get information. So he told me a few things. I called information. I got Milo Hansen's phone number by calling information on the phone. Do people do that anymore? Or?
No.
No. So how old I am. Anyways, so I said, what the hell? I got nothing to lose. So I called the number, and the answer machine came on. So I left a message, said, my name is Ron Bushey. I live in Vermont. I'm a Boone Crockett measurer. I'm just calling to congratulate you on your deer and to tell you what steps you're going to have to do to go through to get deer to clear the world record. I said, all the magazine articles in the world don't mean squat. That doesn't determine a world record. So I explained stuff like that in the answering on the message machine.
By the way, the message machine that they just got installed, because they didn't have one before, but he was getting so many calls, as I recall from reading some articles, he had to get an answering machine installed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that? Did you read that? Or what?
I don't remember.
Okay, so as an interesting part of the story, Milo is a typical cattle and grain farm in Saskatchewan, bigger Saskatchewan, and never had an answering machine. And when he shot the deer, yes, his phone rang off the wall. He told me after, he said he put the phone down and all of a sudden start ringing again. Put it down, start ringing again. So he said that they got the first answering machine the day that I called him. And I didn't know that at the time, and so I remember sitting in this house the next day after I called him. My phone rang at 10 o'clock at night, and that was very unusual. And I'm thinking, I don't know, didn't have caller ID or nothing like that. You had a phone. And I answered it, and he said, "This Ron?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is Milo here." And I'm thinking, oh my God, guy's calling me back? And he said to me, I'll remember this, even though my memory's bad, I remember some things. He said, I got a lot of calls yesterday, got hooked up an answering machine, and he said, I got a lot of calls. But he said, I listened to you, and he said, you're the first person I'm calling back. And he interacted with me right off the bat. And so we talked. That was in 93. Sometime maybe in November. Yeah. Because he shot it November 22nd, I think it was, or 23rd, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so we established communication right from the beginning. And I had some friends in Alaska that I hunted with. Long story. God.
Hey, keep going. Keep going.
My stories are too long. I'm sorry. So I told Milo I was driving to Alaska that year, moose hunting, by the Arctic Circle, and I said, I'm driving back, and, would I be able to see your deer or see you sometime? He said, sure, come on over, So on my way back from Alaska, where I almost got killed by the moose, another story, I stopped at Milo's house, and we had a real good time. We just sat at his kitchen table, and he had an equipment breakdown. He just rolled over his cedar or something, so he was able to stay home during the middle of the day until that got repaired. And I got pictures of the machine that tipped over in the field. Anyways, we drank coffee. I remember I had to pee 2-3 times at his house. So we hit it off pretty good. And so we stayed in contact a bit. And then time went by, and then I got asked by Boone Crockett office to be a panel measurer in 95 in Dallas, Texas. And not, again, every time I say something, I think of another story. That would take forever to explain that one. Because I was only Boone Crockett measurer for like 7 years, and I got invited to be a panel measurer.
Yep.
Which doesn't happen.
Yep.
And I would have missed a phone call, except I came home from work one day, 10 o'clock in the morning, phone rings, and I pick it up, answer it. It's Boone Crockett office. And my friend Jack Renault, who ran the office back then, asked me to be a measurer. And I said, at that time, I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I knew Hansen and other deer would be going to be going there. It would be a fantastic year for typical deer, a 3-year period. And I'm thinking, holy crap. Oops, here we go again. My language. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. You're allowed to swear on this. This isn't radio. We don't got the FCC. If it comes out, it's fine.
I just realized I'm not. Okay. So I got to thinking I might get to measure the world record deer, and.
Now, at the time, sorry to interrupt, but
no.
In 1993, when you stopped, was it 93 when you came back from Alaska?
No, I think it was 94 and I stopped in Alaska.
So there had already been some measurements done by by Saskatchewan measurers, right?
Adam, what's his last name? Evershank. I remember his first name was Adam, who measured Milo's deer a few days after he killed it. Adam was a measurer for the Henry Kelsey Club. That was the local province club, Henry Kelsey. And I remember I got a picture of Adam. He told Milo, he said, either I made a big mistake measuring a deer or you got the new world record.
Yep.
And Milo didn't know nothing about scoring and measuring or anything. So then after the 60-day drying period, 3 measurers, Boone Crockett guys, measured Milo's deer at the bigger high school. And there were a closed-circuit TV, and Bill Jordan's Realtree camera crew went up there to film the whole thing. And there were 400 townspeople that attended that initial measuring, because this was making big, big news. 400
townspeople, that's pretty much the whole town, ain't it?
Well, close to it, yeah. And they came up with a score of 213 1/8, which was like, well, I don't know if you can see there, your camera. There's a picture of James Jordan, the former world record holder, with his deer before he even knew it was going to be the world record. He died before it was declared the world record. He died then Boone Crockett. So that was, anyways. So, Milo's deer had an entry score of 6-7 inches over the current record. It wasn't even close. So, when I got to be invited to be a panel measurer, it was like, how the hell does this happen?
Yeah.
You know.
But when you were on your way back from Alaska and you met him, you saw the deer for the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you didn't measure it there or didn't even want to ask, or there had to have been a party that was like, I kind of want to measure it.
Well, it was in a plexiglass case.
Okay.
5-6 foot high that Milo had specially made.
All right.
And so it was inaccessible.
Yep.
And I was just glad that Milo invited me to his house.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking, all right, don't get too greedy here.
Yeah.
But I had no idea at that time when I first saw it that I would ever measure the deer.
What did you think when you first saw the deer, by the way?
I thought it didn't have a lot of mass, because Saskatchewan's deer are noted for more mass than Milo's deer.
Yep.
But, I mean, when you see the spread on it and the tine length, my first thought was, yeah, if that was measured right, or even close to right, that's going to be the new world record, you know? So, in Milo, he was just, you know, it's like he didn't...
Was the deer mounted at that point, or was it just a rack in the case? Or?
It was mounted it was a mount similar to this. This is a replica, by the way, so people know that, right? Yeah, they know.
Yeah, well, that's the first replica ever, right? And the antlers were made by Pete LaJoy.
Pete LaJoy, the taxidermist from Shrewsbury, Vermont, made the replica of these antlers. That's another story, I can tell you that. And Milo gave me this replica. And it's got the number, inside the plastic skull plate, it's got the number 1 written on it. There were 5 of them made. And Milo gave me the first one ever made. So I figured that replica is about as famous a replica of any deer that was ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And side story, or maybe I'm jumping ahead too much, but Pete LaJoy in Vermont made the replicas because, I'm jumping too far ahead here, am I?
We can get to that if you want. If you want, we'll come back to it.
Okay. So where was I about? Oh, panel measuring.
Yeah. So then you got invited to be the panel measurer.
And being I was a builder and cabinet maker, I'm trying to think, when was Milo brought his deer from Saskatchewan down to Dallas and had to leave it there for a year. Had to leave it for a month. So it was the first time in over 2 years that Milo had shot the deer that he let it out of his sight or out of his possession.
Yeah.
But he had no choice, So the deer get measured, or the animals get panel measured in end of April, beginning of May, and then the awards banquet is a month later. All the heads after they're measured go on display at a public museum where everybody can see them. And then they have the awards banquet, which is like a month after we measured it. So Milo left the deer, and I'm trying to think at what point he showed me the intricacy of that case, of how to get it in and out of the case with the lighting up top and the base down below and the bolts and everything. So I knew how to do it. And when Milo left Dallas, after he dropped the deer off, he asked my boss, Jack Renault, he said, "Can Ron be in charge of the deer getting it out of the case and putting it back in?" And it's sort of like Larry Benoit asked me to speak at his funeral.
Yeah, right.
Back then, And I'm thinking, geez, crow. But Milo had no choice. Somebody had to do it, and somebody had to know how to do it, and I knew how to do it. It took about a half hour to get it out and a half hour to put it back. Mm-hmm. Complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, and so they agreed. So I was pretty much in charge of the World Record Deer in '95 in Dallas when Milo drove back home to Saskatchewan.
You were guarding it essentially. You were the security guard, it seems like.
Yes, and so panel measurement was like 5 or 6 days, and the first day we measured all kinds of other stuff from North America, and then the second day in the morning, the guy in charge of the awards measurers, Jack Graham from Alberta, said, "Ron, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm waiting for so-and-so. We change partners every day to measure with." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do next? What do you want to do?" And I said, "How about that big guy in the other room," meaning this World Record Deer. And he looked at me and he said, "You really want to measure that, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Okay, go at her." Like the typical Canadian way, go at her. So I went in the other room, got the case out, got it out, got the whole thing out, got it out, and I remember when we put the deer to start measuring it, I was with Jimmy Engelman from Tucson, Arizona. He'd been a measurer for 30 years, and that was the first time he got asked to be a panel measurer. And then Phil Wright, who was at one time, he did the recording of the measurements for us. Phil was an older gentleman. He was the chairman of the records committee at one time. He was, how can I describe it? Mr. Boone Crockett. And he had a reputation that preceded him. Wonderful, wonderful man. I knew him from those. And to think that he was going to be, oh, did I twist that again?
It's okay. There you go.
Oh, am I getting too far away?
Nope, you're good.
So I'm thinking, here I am going to measure the world record deer, and Phil Wright is going to be taking my orders. It seems surreal. I hate that word, but it didn't seem
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the guy, is the grandfather of Boone and Crockett. He was there as a volunteer, and I'm measuring and giving him the measurements, and he's recording them. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is unreal. So I remember distinctly, now some people may know this about the Hansen buck. But when Milo shot the deer, it was at the time when he shot, part of it was running, the deer was running away at one point. And Milo had a 308, and he shot at the deer, and it went down, and I think that's when he hit it in the top of the back, and the bullet disintegrated part of it, and part of the lead went up and lodged in the antler. And it's still, to this day, in a real deer, it's still in the antler. And it made a crack in the beam right here, like 2.5 inches. And it was very delicate. No, it's on this side.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
So I remember thinking, God, we got this head, we had to position it on a cushioned chair. I remember saying to Jimmy Engelman, did I write this?
I don't know. No.
I said, if I'm the cause to this antler breaking while we're measuring it, I said, I want to make sure you shoot me because I don't want to live. Because it was pretty delicate looking. The crack was significant.
It even is in the.
It's still there in the replica.
In the replica. Well, that's Pete LaJoy is so good at what he does.
Job on it.
Yeah.
And so we measured the deer, and I'll tell you this for the record, so people will know. Any animal that comes to panel measuring that may be a world record, the rule is, Boone Crockett it has to be measured 3 separate teams. At least 2 guys on each team. So a lot of people have asked the question, well, what do you do? Take an average of the scores? And no, it wasn't an average. So after the 3rd measuring, everybody that measured the deer, we got together, 6 people on the same table, 1 score sheet and 1 recorder. And we went line by line to see where, on our score sheets, what agreed and what disagreed. Mm-hmm. And wherever there was any number that wasn't equal all the way across, we remeasured that, whether it was the circumference, point length, or beam length. The biggest differences was in the beam length. So me and Jimmy, Jimmy and I, we came up with a 214 and an eighth or something like that. And the final score wound up at 213 and 5/8. So we're, pretty close. But, so what we did is all 6 guys, we remeasured as a group. And everybody, all 6 people agreed, okay, this is the final measurement. And we created a new score sheet, a 4th score sheet. Mm-hmm. And that was the one that, and then when it got added up, came out to 213 and 5/8. That was 4/8 higher than the entry score. That was 4/8 higher than the score after the 60-day drying period, mm-hmm. which is a little bit unusual. But
so which one gets entered into the all-time record?
So the all-time record book wound up with the panel score that we came up with.
Okay.
213 and 5/8. Now there's some other rules, and I don't want to get into that now about Boone Crockett has. It's not complicated, but so that was the final score. And then...
And was Milo down there for that?
When we did the measuring, no, he was back in Saskatchewan.
Is that unusual if you got a potential world record, or it's just because it was a long drive and he was probably busy being a farmer, right?
Yeah, it was right around planting time for him, April, May, I think it was. And he had to get back home, and none of the trophy hunters were allowed to watch their heads be measured.
Okay.
For anything, whether it's world record or high ranking, anything. So he knew that ahead of time, and he was fine with that. Didn't have any choice. He came down with the province of Saskatchewan assigned one of their technicians, Ian McMurtry. I haven't said that name for 30 years. To be a facilitator for Milo. So the guy was an employee of Saskatchewan Wildlife, but his main job was to ensure and make sure everything went right in order to that deer reach its final pinnacle of the world record. So Ian and Milo collaborated on a book together and on different shows and different things. It evolved into quite a friendship. Ian passed away many years ago, and but so when Milo brought it down from Saskatchewan to Dallas, Texas, the 2 of them drove down together, and then time went on. The The banquet was held a month later after the
Now, wait a minute. So what? So does he just wait around for a phone call to be like, hey, it's certified the world record? Or like, how does he find out about it?
Okay, I'll tell you that. It was... So, us panel measurers, we were called judges.
Mm-hmm.
We were told, whatever information we have at the panel measuring, we can't divulge that to anybody, even the trophy owners. They can only learn of the final score of their trophy at the awards banquet or after.
Wow. Okay.
So,
so the panel measuring isn't like it's not like
it's not public.
Up on a stage. You guys are in a back room doing it.
We were in a...
I say back room, but I just say
yeah,
like
it was like a back room. Dallas Museum of Natural History is where we did it, I think.
Okay.
They had a full-size life replica of a woolly mammoth with a big, gigantic tusk on it, I think, outside there. But anyways, and I remember Milo calling me and wanted to know what the score was of his deer. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. There I go again. Oh, damn.
Lanny would say, whoopsie. I screwed up again.
Well, I'm not saying whoopsie, and I screwed up again. Yeah, okay. So, I remember saying to Milo, I'd love to tell you what the final score is, but I gave my word I wouldn't say anything to anybody, and I can't tell you. And he said, okay. But he was planning on coming down, he had to come to the banquet, pick the deer up to drive it back to Saskatchewan. A lot of effort on his part for that. But anyways, so the time when the banquet came, that's when people got their final scores. In other words, people weren't called. Not everybody made it to the banquet that had heads there.
Yeah.
Some moose come from Alaska or whatever, and so those people I think were called after that. They weren't sending email, by the way, or they weren't sending text. They got a phone call, I think. I'm saying that facetiously because that was in '95. So when did internet become very popular?
Maybe around '96 or '7, I think it started kicking off. If I remember.
All right. So
here pre-internet.
Yeah, pre-internet. Yeah. So then after that, life goes back to normal. Milo goes home. When
you look at that deer, though, right? Sorry to interrupt again.
Nope.
When you look at it, and he was what, 6 or 7 inches. You know, from the non-certified scores were 6 to 7 inches or so, right? How much bigger than the Jordan buck?
The Jordan buck, yeah.
So he probably wasn't super nervous.
He wasn't worried.
There's not much you can look at that's going to be deductions. He probably knew that it was.
He knew it would be the world record.
Yeah.
Or I think I don't think him and I never really talked about him worrying about that. It's just knowing what the final score was. You know?
Okay.
And so his concern was, well, he shot it in '93, he got final panel measure in '95.
How much did it lose in that drying?
In shrinkage. Well,
yeah.
Amazing thing is it didn't lose anything, which was unusual.
Well, isn't it a lot because mass? Isn't mass where you get a lot of the loss in that?
Well,
and this wasn't a mass. He gets most of his score in length and.
Two of the things. One of my theories is, and I can't prove this, but the inside spread remained 27 2/8 from one 60-day period to 2 years later stayed the same thing. Now when Milo, I'm trying to think if I remember this, how I remembered it. Instead of sawing the antlers out of the skull plate, he kept the whole upper skull intact before it was mounted. And I think that, I can't prove this, but it's a theory.
Yep.
That bone material of the skull acted as a moisture reservoir for the rest of the antlers. Mm. And not only that, but it acted as a stronger holding point.
Right.
Keep it from
You can just picture it that it couldn't,
So when you cut a rack out of a skull, you get a little thing like that, and there's not much material, generally speaking. But Milo's was the whole thing. So that's the only thing I can think of what kept it from shrinking or growing. Now, it might have shrunk some, but we were different measurers than the original guys. Some people say, well, I'm a conservative measurer and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And I used to always use the term, I'm not conservative, I'm not anything. I'm accurate. That was my term that I like to use, accurate. Because you can say you be conservative and you measure the beam length and you not shorten the beams, but depending on how you hold your cable on the outside of the beam, that can be a big variance right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember how that varied from one to another, from one measure to another, it changes. So his deer could have shrunk some, but because it was done by different measures, that was the bigger factor right there.
Yep. But basically, though, it was pretty much well known that there's a 99% chance it's going to be certified the world record. There's not, you can't see much
there was
deductions
no question
in
that
there.
it was. No one that I ever spoke to thought that it would go below 206. No way. Possible.
Yep.
It was pretty cut and dry. So, what was unusual is that here's a dirt farmer from Saskatchewan, never knew anything about Boone Crockett or measuring or anything. He hunted with his 3 lifelong friends who, I don't think many people know this, but the day that this deer was killed, Milo shot it with his friends. It was on a deer drive.
Yep. So was this one.
Yes. Incredible similarities between the king buck and the Hansen buck.
Both with bullet holes in their antlers.
Both with bullet holes in the back of the antler. Both no one saw them before, hunting with their friends, lifetime friends, and, just average guns and average everything.
Yep. Your everyday hunter.
That's it.
Yep.
When Milo shot his deer, I believe, if I remember this right, all 3 guys in his party had cracks at the deer shooting at it before Milo did. And there was one guy who shot at it, Dwayne Zachary, I think is his name, was a bus driver that saw the deer one time, and I think it was in a muzzleloader season, he got a shot at it, but it obviously didn't hit it.
The year before, right?
Same year.
No, same year, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, yeah. And so when Milo shot, he was the last guy of his group to get a crack at it. And when they started, the deer was off of Milo's farm. Mm-hmm. And then as the day went on and they set up new drives, it wound up on Milo's land. So Milo killed it on his own land. And the irony was, I got a picture here someplace. I was looking for it this morning. I don't know what to do with it. It was a picture of Milo standing in his hunting outfit. I wanted him to take me to the spot where the deer died. Did I tell you that before? So I got a picture someplace in that room of where the Hansen buck died. And I got another picture of me standing where they first started it during that day. So a picture where it started, a picture where it ended. And the picture of Milo was standing holding his gun, all dressed up. It was a neat picture, colorful thing and all. And I think it's the only picture in the world of that spot taken where Milo shot his deer. But anyways, what Milo told me, so when he got up to the deer and saw the size of the antlers, he started vibrating, he said. And he was nervous. And when the other guys got up to him, he said, I had to bum a cigarette. Because Milo used to smoke a lot, like a lot of guys did. Yeah. But he had quit for years. And then he was so nervous, standing over the dead deer, that he got a cigarette from Rennie, I think it was, and started smoking again. And he continued smoking for years after that.
Oh, wow.
So, and then, let's talk about smoking. Brings all the memories. One time, when Milo called me after the panel measuring the world record, and I think I told you this a little bit, Milo called me to ask me to travel with him around the country to show the deer. And he would pay me, and it wouldn't cost me nothing. And that's another whole long story. I won't get into that. But
what did he want your role to be in that?
Well, he knew I could drive. He knew I could drive because I went to Alaska driving and back.
Yeah.
That was one thing.
Yeah.
He wanted someone that knew about the deer, the scoring, and obviously I knew about it because I measured it.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted, and did I do writing back before that? I did writing, I'm trying to think, and I wrote about our travels together. But so driving, scoring, and someone that he could kind of count on to be with from day to day, you know.
And you knew how to open up that plexiglass.
And I knew how to open up. Yeah, I mean, the case was very complicated.
Yeah,
but, you know.
yeah.
So it all worked out, you know, and I wrote down, I think in North American Whitetail, that I couldn't have had a better job in the winter. Being a builder in Vermont in the winter is not fun sometimes.
Yeah.
But being a Boone Crockett measure traveling to the World Record deer in the winter, not a bad job, you know. Plus getting paid. And I mean, I didn't pay no hotels, no food, no gas, no nothing.
Yeah.
And what I would do is yes, I was a writer, that's right, that's how it came. So I used to make arrangements with some of the show promoters around the country. I'd make the initial call to see if they'd be interested in hiring Milo to display his deer. Mm-hmm. And then Milo would call them and make the final financial arrangement. But I belonged to the Outdoor Writers Association of America back then. And I had contact or ways of a book I used to get every so often of all the shows in the country. Again, pre-internet, right? So it worked out where I helped Milo book shows, and it just worked out. So Milo used to send me a plane ticket. I'd fly to Saskatoon. He'd meet me at the airport. We'd drive back to Vermont. We'd stay here at this house together. And then we'd use this as a jumping off point to go to the shows.
Yep.
And I always planned them to go from east to west.
Yeah.
And, you know, the weeks are... And then after we're done, we did 3 or 4 shows a year. Not a lot. Mm-hmm. And then after we drove to Saskatchewan back home, and then I would fly back to Vermont. And that would take maybe a month or so, something like that. And it was interesting time. That was back in the 90s. Before 2000. 99 was the last year Milo and I traveled together, I think it was. Yeah. Okay.
I keep going back to just what you said about him having a cigarette, and then that, isn't it great that where everything happens and Milo is gifted this deer. It manifests for him. He doesn't ask for it like we talk about. None of these guys did. They didn't know any of those deer were going to be world records. They just shoot them, and then things change in your life. But that's got to be something from, it feels almost divine, where he gets the deer. Okay, you're gifted with this incredible thing, but then the devil comes up a little bit, and you're going to start smoking again, though. Like that's isn't that pretty crazy?
Well, yeah. I mean,
did he end up quitting again after that?
Yeah, I guess so. But all the time we traveled, he smoked a lot in the truck, and I never smoked. I couldn't stand. I was a runner, so I never smoked cigarettes. I did a fair share of drinking, but not smoking. But in the truck, Milo used to always, when he was driving, he would crack his window about an inch so the smoke would get drawn out to his window.
Yeah.
Because he knew it bothered me. But he smoked a lot in the truck.
Yeah, but that started it again.
That started it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you something that a few people know. One of the times when I was at his house, we were just sitting drinking coffee, and his wife, Olive, was with us. We're talking. And Olive is a lean and mean, tough farm woman. And she could do anything any guy could do. Drive a tractor, she knew the business well. And she loved and enjoyed her farm life. And one time she said to me, "Boy, will I be glad someday when somebody beats his record." Because she was tired of not having her husband or having their farm life disrupted. Because I can't even begin to say how much, I don't even know how much that would change everything. People calling, people wanting to come over, wanting to see the deer. it just changes everything in your life. You don't own your life anymore.
Yep.
And she didn't like that.
Yep.
And I remember when she said that to me, and then I looked at Milo, and he looked at me like with a sheepish face, like, I ain't saying nothing here.
I know better.
Olive was, you don't want to mess with her. I haven't seen her or talked to her, either one of them, for quite a while. So, but it's funny how things happen. It can be a blessing in disguise almost, and well, it'd be like anything that changes your life drastically. If you have a severe accident or become ill or whatever, or your house burns or something, you don't plan on anything like that happening. It just happens. So I don't know.
Oh, and so many people win the lottery every single day, And also when you think about it, deer, even the world record deer, I think I read that Milo, that deer earned him $600,000 over 10 years or something like that. When you think about it, that's $60,000 a year. Okay, that's a good living, but it's not. You don't get generational wealth from a deer.
I've heard people speculate different things, and to be perfectly honest with you, I think everybody was just guessing.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody really knew. I don't even know if Milo kept track of it.
Yeah.
And back in the 90s, it was a different world then, and deer were, we'd travel, he'd make some money, but he had a lot of expenses, losing work from time and farming and everything. So it wasn't like winning in the lottery and winning $5 million or something.
Exactly. But it comes with a lot of it comes with
a lot of responsibility.
Work, families change, the family dynamic, all that stuff, like you just mentioned, changes. So it's like, do you really want to be the guy who gets the next world record? If you think about it.
Well,
what is it going to do?
Most people don't even, I don't think of that kind of,
right,
it could happen to anybody, but
yeah.
What to me was interesting is that the deer was a sort of like a naturally grown deer. Of course, the deer in Saskatchewan had some pretty good food.
Feed off of farms.
And canola and rye and wheat. And compared to deer up in the mountains of Vermont or Maine,
yeah,
they're eating bark and twigs and berries and stuff. So you got and that was pre-food plot days, so to speak, before
people planted stuff specifically to grow deer
or whatever. And it's the same thing with a lot of the greater deer. They just grew naturally.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I'm getting off track a little bit, Maine, the state record deer from Maine, the Hill Gould buck, shot in 1910 in Grand Lake Stream. That deer measured, I think, 259. I did a story on that years ago. Big Buck magazine. But that deer has circumferences that average 8 7/8. It's the highest average circumference of any deer ever killed, or it was at that time. I think it still is. Now that deer grew up in an area that was total wilderness practically.
Wow.
To grow antlers like that, it's just phenomenal. It's like one of a kind. Sort of like Michael Jordan being the greatest basketball player. How did he get to be so different than anybody else that looked like him? Same build, same height, same physical, same food and everything.
Genetic mutation or something.
How does someone get to be like that?
Yeah.
How does
Yeah, the buck must have had a little genetic mutation. Just one tiny little thing when the DNA was getting created, switched, and it was like, hey, you're allowed to grow these giant antlers with all the other Maine bucks.
Boy, yeah. So, anyways.
So yeah. we're gonna just for the viewers and stuff, we're gonna get into the Johnny King buck a little bit later as well, and tie the stories together, and we're gonna go from how like this buck very clearly. There's not very many deductions. It was no question it was going to be the world record. This one a little more controversial.
And a little more controversial.
And there's something. And but we'll get into a little bit of detail about that. But I don't think we're even close to being done on the Milo side of things yet. And I want to just You and Milo were great friends, right?
Yes, to answer your question, I would say Milo back then was probably my best friend. Even though he lived in Saskatchewan, I lived in Vermont. And I mean, I had a lot of friends. But I mean, I traveled with Milo. When he asked me to travel with him, we did it for 4 years. And I figured very conservatively, we probably drove 30,000 miles together. And I did a lot of driving of those miles with the world record deer right behind. A lot of responsibility, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And drove through some awful bad conditions sometimes, and snow and slippery and everything. And I used to get a little worried. Milo was never worried. You want to hear a story about driving?
Yeah.
Outside of Salt Lake City, we were going through Salt Lake City. We were on the east side of Salt Lake, going up through the Wasatch Mountains. And it was early one morning, crack of dawn. It was bad snowstorm on the highway. And I think that was that the first year, yeah, when we were on our way to San Mateo, California. And I'll always remember how Milo said, "Okay, Ron, it's your turn to drive." And it was like, I never said I don't feel like it or anything like that. I said, okay. So Milo would get in the passenger side and start sleeping. And I remember this morning going up the mountain pass, probably 30, 40 miles going into Salt Lake City. Wicked snowstorm, roads covered, plow trucks all over. It was like rush hour for people going into Salt Lake. And there was traffic both ways, and there were cars off the road and sliding in the ditches. And I'm thinking, oh man, I got the world record deer with me here, and Milo's sleeping, and he don't know what's going on. And I'm, what do you call it, white knuckle
White
time?
knuckling, yeah.
So I remember going up that stretch. It was like a 3-lane highway, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm getting in the middle lane, I'm staying here. And cars were passing me left and right, and people are crazy, and got through that. And remember going into Salt Lake City, there were a lot of interstate going through the city, a lot of curves, under bridges and stuff. And then we got out to the far side towards I guess it was the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And the snow dissipated at that point, and it was easier driving down lower, flat. And Milo finally woke up, and he's like, "Oh, where are we? How are we doing?" He had no idea what we just went through, and he slept like a baby. And I remember that time. That was an incredible time of driving. That was one of the times I wasn't scared, but I knew the enormous responsibility of having a world record deer back there. And I'm trying to think, was that at first when we traveled, we had a little minivan front wheel drive vehicle.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we had that one. Then we had a 4-wheel drive pickup with a cap on it that kept the deer behind there. But anyways.
How would you describe Milo's personality? How do you describe him as a human being, not a hunter or anything?
Milo was one of the nicest persons I ever met or dealt with. He had a very easygoing, jovial, never got mad, never got upset, never swore. Neither one of us did. I think I started swearing in my older age. But anyways, he was easy to get along with. We enjoyed each other's company. And I still, I get involved with these different people around the country, Larry Benoit and Milo Hanson. I'm in awe of them. And I'm thinking, why me, and why do I not get along with them? But it's just kind of like, I don't know. So Milo was a great guy. Very, I think I said humble. Did I say humble?
Yeah.
But he was a good, what's the word, holder of the world record whitetail. He did a good job representing the hunting community.
Yeah.
And he was always had like open door policy. He was friendly to everybody. He never looked down at anybody. He never made anybody feel awkward or anything. I don't think, you know.
It didn't really get to his head. It sounds like either.
No,
it was
he
just,
never
didn't change.
It didn't change him as a person. I don't think. I didn't see it anyways. You know. Of course, I didn't live with him 12 months of the year like his wife did, so that might have been a different story there. I don't know. So.
But you had a lot of good times with him, right?
Had a lot of good times. For 4 years, we traveled together.
What's one of your best memories of that time with him? What's something that you look back on and you can't help but laugh and get warm and fuzzy feelings inside? You know, what's something that you remember that maybe?
A couple of things. One is that table right around the corner from you here. Milo would sit there when we were traveling together. He would eat breakfast. I had a beagle dog at the time. I got a good picture of Milo holding my beagle dog, Libby dog we called her. And Milo slept here in my house many times. And that was a good time there, you know. I was building. I did some carpentry work. It was like in between stuff. One time I took Milo to work with me. I got a picture of him standing on my staging with a hammer in his hand, leaning over a micro lamb beam that went across his garage where we're going to build an apartment above the garage. And just an average guy, kind of. I'll tell you a time of warm and fuzzy. One of the times we got back from traveling at his place in Saskatchewan, we got home about midnight, and it was calving time, I guess you'd call it. And all of a sudden there was one cow in the barn that was ready to give birth, but was having a hard time. She was standing, I think, what they called it. So about midnight, we had lights like this in Milo's barn, something like that. And Milo, he got on, you know, the cow couldn't deliver her own calf. So Milo had to put the long plastic gloves on and get what they call a calf puller.
Yep.
You know, are you familiar with that? You know,
I have seen it. Yeah.
So what it did is, this may sound gross, but you have to go inside the back end of the cow with like these special chains, hook onto the back of the calf's feet, and the calf puller is the thing that hooked onto the hips of the cow on the back, and it was like a ratchet.
Yeah.
And you had to pull the calf out.
Yeah. And
I remember that night, after midnight, dark, cold, and that cow flopped down onto the floor, and the mother turned around, looked at it, started licking it, and Milo had a look of relief on his face. You know, like just saved the life of the calf and the mother.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what would have happened if she couldn't have delivered on her own, you know, which she didn't. She needed help. So that was a time that was kind of close. And then there were times where Milo and I, we roomed together. I'm thinking of the time I got a famous hat. I don't know if I can say this or not. It was before our vernacular got changed. So we did a show in Suffern, New York, years ago, Paul Fuller show. And we came into the hotel room, we checked in, and it was on a Sunday, I think, but there was a bad winter storm, and there were a lot of power lines down all over. And the place that we were booked at, we had a room reserved, but when we got there, it was given away by the hotel owners to all of the power company employees. There must have been like 20, 30 trucks in the parking lot, you know. And the guy said, "I'm sorry, we had to give you a room up. We didn't have any choice." And Miles says, "Oh, what do we, you know, here we are, a million miles from nowhere." And the guy says, "Well, we have one room that we probably could give you, and I don't even know if you can use the word anymore, it was a handicap room. So they had a ramp going up to it for someone in a wheelchair. But the guy said, well, the problem is it's only got one big king-size bed. So, it may sound funny now, but it wasn't at the time. So Milo and I would go look in the room, and Milo, this is a gigantic looking bed, king-size, I don't know. And Milo says to me, he says, Ron, I'll sleep on my side of the bed if you promise to sleep on your side. I said, okay. We took the room. We had no choice.
So we're gonna need some whiskey, didn't you?
Well, no, we were both pretty tired, and we slept there. But the funny thing was, that was when I was talking about earlier, after that, we had to go from Suffern, New York to San Mateo, California in 2.5 days. I mean, it was night and day driving the whole time.
Yeah.
Literally. And we got out to California, and one of the guys there, Larry Gay, did bronze replicas and stuff like that. And he had done a bronze of Milo's deer and the old Jordan buck. Of Milo's deer jumping over a fence, and the Jordan buck antlers were down low on the ground. Symbolic thing.
Yeah.
Hanson driver. And Larry Gay was a younger guy, 35-ish or so, 40 maybe, I don't know. I say younger, that's probably old for you, I don't know. But anyways, and we told him the story of the bed, and he laughed and laughed. So a couple weeks after that whole trip, I got home, I got a package in the mail from Larry Gay. There was a hat in it. I could go get it now, but I'm not gonna. There was a hat in it and a shirt, t-shirt. The hat was blue and the lettering was white. And on that hat it says, I slept with Milo Hansen. And it was the funniest thing in the world. The guy got a big kick out of that.
That's funny.
He had this, so that was before, how can I say this the right way without, when you slept with someone, that's when meant the word slept meant you slept with them. It didn't mean something else like it means today, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe other people listening to this will get that. I don't know. So, but, so I have that hat today, and it's a conversation piece now. Oh, and one of my friends took a picture of the hat a while back. I don't remember who did it, and posted it on the internet somehow, and it got spread around. Ron Bushey slept with Milo Hanson.
That's funny.
Christ almighty.
So,
I don't know. Okay.
So good times galore, right?
Oh.
And I
we didn't have any bad times that I can think of, you know?
What about you now, Fred Goodwin, who was one of the most renowned antler collectors of all time, and you're friends with him. You had to tell the story about him, because as I recall, that was a really fun time for you guys. You had him come down, and Milo was here, and he didn't know it, and it was a surprise. And you go through that a little bit if you don't mind.
One of my old good friends, Gary Merrill from Pittsfield, Vermont, was a good friend of Fred Goodwin. Fred Goodwin lived up in Silver Ridge, Maine. Shot one of the most famous Maine bucks of all time. Fred died at 102. He was the original antler collector, and he used to collect Winchester rifles. And he would buy heads from people. He had ads in papers and stuff. And he was one of a kind, unbelievable. And so when I was traveling with Milo, we used to have the deer set up right in between. We'd bring the case in, put it right on the table over there. And my friend Gary tricked Fred into coming to Vermont with the Silver Ridge buck. It was mounted. And I'm trying to think, what was the excuse or the reason? We wanted to get Fred and Milo together. Without him knowing.
Yeah.
And so, God almighty, I hate this part. I can't remember. Gary had a good lie, if you would call it that, of getting Fred to come over. Now, you know, where Fred lived was like 8-9 hours from here. So I remember we had the deer set up there, and Fred walking in, coming over and looking, and he knew of Milo Hanson of the World Record Deer, knew what it was. He was surprised to see it, you know. So we kind of tricked him, and so, and then he brought his Silver Ridge deer, and we brought it in, hung it up on the window over here, took pictures of that. It was just a good time. I invited about a dozen friends. I got some pictures in there that I was looking at this morning of those days. And I invited friends coming over. We had like a potluck supper type thing. And just an evening, a good time. And Fred was, I went to his 100th birthday party up in Maine when he turned 100. And
was Carl there? Carl Leeser? I think I remember him telling me something.
He probably was.
I think he might have been.
Remember for sure.
Yep.
I first met Carl when Carl came here, before Carl became a Boone Crockett measurer. He hunted up in Maine.
Yeah.
With Gary Merrill. They knew each other.
Yeah.
And I measured one of Carl's heads. And one thing led to another, and Carl eventually became measured for Northeast Big Buck Club,
yep.
and then for Boone Crockett, and
Carl was telling me I got to interview somebody in Pittsfield. It probably was Gary Merrill. He's still around?
Last I knew he was, or is.
He said he kills a lot of big bucks. He's got more big bucks on the wall than anyone
Yeah, Gary is an excellent hunter, good tracker, knew Larry Benoit well,
yep.
knew Lanny well. He's more like Lanny's age. Maybe I think he's older than Lanny, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of a shorter guy. Not very big or anything, but yeah, he used to hunt up in the same area that I hunted with when Larry was hunting up in Maine off the Golden Road.
Yeah.
And that would be a good interview. I haven't seen or talked to Gary for the longest time.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we had some good times together, and he was the one that convinced Fred Goodwin to come down here.
Yep.
And because I was a Boone Crockett measurer and Fred collected antlers, we had stuff in common, and God, I can't begin to think of the stories about knowing Fred. I was almost going to write a book about him, but I just didn't have that ability to know enough about what to do and stuff. But Fred, if anybody knew Fred, that was a treat. You know, he was, what a rig he was, I'll tell you. Oh my God. Oh. Unbelievable. He never got married.
Yeah.
But he had a few kids around the country, though.
Spread the genes.
Say that? Or?
Yeah, why not?
All right. So, all right.
All right. So good times. All right, and so now we get to the part where, unfortunately, right, big bucks do things to people, right? And
change their lives.
Change your lives, and you had a falling out with Milo, right?
Well, I don't know if you could label it that. I didn't have anything. When I got involved with the king buck, and I say this, all love and everything or whatever, I think Milo might have interpreted that I was turning on him or giving him up or whatever, which wasn't the case at all. Oh boy, where to start? I don't know. So it was around that point where Milo stopped contacting me, or we didn't talk anymore. And I wasn't favoring the Johnny King deer should be the world record deer as far as I'm concerned. And based on score and the rules that we had at the time. But the politics got involved, and I don't know how deep to get into this here, but so that was about the time I think that Milo, I never talked to him about it. I never had the chance to talk to him. I wrote to him several times, never heard back from him. And to this day, that concerns me more than, and I got dismissed by Boone and Crockett.
Yep.
About 12 years ago or whatever.
We'll talk about that too, yeah. But
yeah. After 26 years, holy mackerel. And, but being dismissed by Boone and Crockett bothered me at first, but I got over that. But I guess you could say I haven't got over not being friends with Milo anymore. That still bothers me to this day.
Weighs you down a little bit?
Well...
If anything does?
Yeah. I don't know. I want to write to him. I wrote to him twice, like I said, but I don't want to bug him. And I want to try to explain something to him he may not know before either one of us check out.
If you could say one thing to him, what would it be? What would the first thing you said?
I love you.
Yeah.
My God, we did a lot of stuff together. So it's hard to lose a good friend.
Yep.
And I felt that I lost a good friend. I could lose Boone and Crockett. I can accept that. And I can't accept losing Milo the same way as losing Boone and Crockett.
Yeah.
So Milo meant more to me in a way than Boone and Crockett did, Is that, I don't know how that sounds.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
But
what would you want to explain to him?
That I would like to still be friends if I could.
Yeah.
That I didn't have anything against him, and the way my involvement with the King Buck turned out, it wasn't that I favored Johnny over Milo at all.
You just wanted to. You're an accurate scorer, right? You want things to be accurate,
yeah,
like you said, and it was just it's from what I get and what you've told me, I feel like it's not anything to do with favoring anything. In order to be the scorer the way that you do it, you're just scoring it the way that you think it's scored, and your opinion is nothing. It doesn't say that you think Johnny King's a better hunter or a better guy,
exactly,
or it's just you thought that the scores were a few inches higher, right?
Well, I think yes, to answer your question, if that's
something like that.
Yeah. I wasn't favoring Johnny over Milo or anything. I was trying to keep a level playing field for everybody, according to how I read and interpreted the measures manual. And so the King Buck was ruled by the Boone and Crockett Club or officials, Jack Renault, or I don't know if it was Jack or the committee, which one, but the G3 on the right side, they said it was an abnormal point. And it's almost too long a story to go into or explain, but everybody I've seen, and you can show a close-up of this later if you want, it's a typical point, in my opinion, smaller than the match one on the other side, but if you look at a score sheet, most points on one side have a smaller point than the other side. That's why we have a deduction column.
Yeah.
So I always felt that it met the rules of Boone and Crockett at the time of common base points. And that's something that could take a long time to try to explain, but Boone and Crockett, I think I've said this publicly and privately, they liked the idea of Milo having a world record deer. He was a good steward of the world record, good relationship with Boone and Crockett, everything was comfortable. And for someone to come along and upset that apple cart, I don't know, I can't prove this or whatever, but I don't think they like that happening. And I base that on, I know of several other animals in the top end of the record book, world record animals that should have been a world record but weren't, for all different kinds of reasons. That would take hours and hours to go into that. But, so everybody that I've talked to, including Boone and Crockett measures, agree that that's a 6x6 typical. Now, that originally was measured by John Ramsey from Wisconsin at 218 4/8, which is like almost 5 inches more than Milo's final score. And then when it came down to measuring it officially, it was measured at 180, because you had to take that G3, call it abnormal, and the corresponding G3 on the other side abnormal, and it was deduction. And it didn't make sense. And when Johnny heard that that's where they want to do it, he said, I'm not in. Oh, I moved the speaker here.
It's okay.
Johnny said, I'm not entering, I don't want to enter my deer in the record book at that. That's. And then in the meantime, he sold the deer to Jay Fish, and Jay tried to promote the deer and try to advocate for it to become a better score. So eventually, the deer was never officially measured and entered in Boone Crockett. And then Wisconsin Buck and Bear Club was going to measure it for their purposes. And there was a group of 5 or 6 measurers, Boone Crockett and other measurers, that were going to do it. And I was invited to be an observer to watch the process. I was driving to Saskatchewan to go deer hunting, going right through Wisconsin. And it was going to be the same weekend, and also I was driving out there. I don't know if I ever told you or too many people this. Driving out, and I got a call from Jay Fish, who eventually bought Johnny's deer from him. That's another whole story. But Jay said, it looks like the measuring session is off. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. Jack called everybody, Jack Renault, Boone Crockett office. Basically, how can I say this tactfully? Implied, for lack of a better word, that if anybody else measured that deer, they would be dismissed. And so I guess a lot of tails were tucked between their legs, and everybody went home. And I'm on my way out there. So I got there, and there was one fellow left, who was a Pope and Young guy that was still there. Herman fella. Nice guy, tall guy. Sort of, he didn't take any crap from anybody. And I said to Jay when I got there, or maybe on the phone on the way out, I'll measure the deer. I'm not afraid to measure it. And I measured it back then with Herman, and we came up with a score of, I think it was 213 and 6/8. So it had shrunk some from the original 218.
Yep.
Might have been measured differently. But anyways, I sent the score sheet in with Herman's name on it, my name, with a one-page description to Boone Crockett office. They didn't like that. I was pushing the envelope, and I'm saying...
Now that's 1/8 higher than Milo's, right?
Yeah.
Only 1/8 at that point?
Yeah.
By that score? Okay.
Yeah. So, but the original thing at 218 and 4/8 that John Ramsey did,
Yep.
That would have been more indicative of this type of rack. Mm-hmm. This rack grossed, when John Ramsey measured it for entry, which never got accepted and never got entered at that, it was a 225 typical gross, with 0 inches of abnormal point deduction. It's the only deer that grosses that high that has no abnormal points on it. Look at it.
Yep.
I mean, there's a couple of nubs here and there, but nothing an inch long.
Yeah, again, the only thing that it could be disputed as abnormal is that point, right?
Well, yeah, that was the contention. But, and it's a common base point. So, and the rules have changed by Boone and Crockett over the years, what defines common base. And the basic rule now is, or used to be back when I was measuring, the base of the point had to have a figure 8 to be considered common base. So figure 8.
What we'll do is after this, I'll take the camera off and you can explain what the figure 8 and the common base.
Okay.
You can explain that, and we'll put it at the end of the video.
I'll tell you my experiment with a bag full of peanuts. I traced the bag full of peanuts out on a piece of paper, and every one was a number 8 figure, but they were all different.
Yeah.
No two alike. Just grab the handle. Anyways, so when I sent the score sheet in, official score with Herman Feller as the Pope and Young measure with me, and that was designed to be an official entry score, in my way of thinking. And they didn't like that. So later on I got a letter that said I broke the measurer's code of conduct. That's what they told me. Just a letter, no phone call, no explanation, no nothing. And I remember reading that letter in my pickup truck in the post office parking lot. I'm saying, you gotta be kidding me. After 26 years, I get dismissed because of that. So, not a lot I could do about it at the time, but I just felt that, what I did was the right thing. And I felt that I had measured it properly. I only wish I could have measured it when John Ramsey measured it when it was first killed. It would have scored even higher, But heck, I think I measured it, 2011 or 12, something like that. And it was killed in 06. So there's 5-6 years of drying that happened to that head. So anyways.
So up until 2011 or 12, when you scored it, you still had a relationship with Milo and a good friendship, or even though that you weren't traveling to the shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
When's the last time you seen Milo?
That's a good question. I haven't even thought of that. It was been at least 10 years, 12 years maybe. I used to stop at his house when I was deer hunting in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
On the Indian Reserve. It was about an hour from where Milo lived. And I used to bring some of the hunters over to Milo's house with his knowledge and permission so they could see the deer, the world record. And that might have been one of the last times that I was at Milo's, now that I think about it. And hence, here's poor Olive, his wife, house getting disrupted again, you know what I mean?
Yep.
People coming in and want to see the deer. And anybody going to Saskatchewan knows that the world record's an hour away. And I was a good conduit to get them to see it. It worked out perfect, kind of, Milo never seemed to mind, I don't think. He was really a gentleman about the whole thing. He always was courteous to people. One guy, that's how we got to go fishing together, Milo and I. One guy that was hunting in Alberta, he was from North Carolina. He called Milo from Alberta after he was done hunting, asked if he could come see the deer. Milo said, sure, come on over. So, Willie Etheridge owned a big seafood company in Wanchese, North Carolina. Owned fishing boats, owned big trucks and processing, restaurants, anything to do with fishing. Willie was the guy. And so when Willie Etheridge finally visited Milo and saw the deer, I'm getting off the track here. He said to Milo, he said, if you're ever in North Carolina, look me up. I'll take care of you. Well, Milo and I traveled all over North America. And we made contact with Willie and went to see him in North Carolina. And Willie was just ecstatic that we did that, And he said, Willie had some close friends and had his restaurant, and we went to eat at his restaurant. Willie took care of us, and he said, I made arrangements tomorrow for you guys to go fishing with just you, the captain, and the mate, the four of you on a boat, to go yellow tuna fishing for yellowfin tunas.
Yep.
25 pound fish. So we did that, Milo and I. First time Milo had ever not only been on the ocean, first time he ever seen the ocean. He got sick on a boat, Milo did, I think I told you, I don't have it, I don't know where I do it. I got an interesting picture of Milo leaning over the edge of the boat, what I call feeding the fish. Milo was a landlubber, So, but that was a time. How did I get onto that story about Willie? I don't know. Oh, people coming over to Milo's house.
Yep.
And
yeah, we were talking about maybe the last time that you seen him, because you hunted in Saskatchewan after you guys had your.
I still hunt in Saskatchewan,
you still do.
Even after our falling out, so whatever you want to call it.
Every time you go up there, there's a little party probably, right? That's like.
Oh, I want to go see him in the worst way every year, but I try to respect his wish or his privacy or whatever you want to call it.
But there never was a definitive thing, is the thing about it, right? It's not like he ever wrote you and said, "Don't contact me," or he stopped calling you.
Stopped contacting. Our contact and friendship ended. You know.
I hope you give him a call and.
I might write to him again. Someone told me a while back that he may not be well. He may be ill. I don't know. I mean, I'm 75. I think Milo's 76. So I'm a firm believer in anything can happen to anybody at any time. You know. So maybe after you leave here today or whenever, tomorrow or whenever you leave, or you ever going to leave, by the way, or what?
I have some work to do today, believe it or not.
So I may sit down and write. I got a couple of yellow pads with yellow line paper. That's how I communicate, by the way. I don't do anything with my fingers like that. I'm not an email or
texter
or anything, you know. So I'd like to get back with him at least one more time. I hope sometime, somehow, it happens.
Well, one thing you and I have talked about it a little bit is that the one of the main goals and themes behind this Huntstock festival that I started last year is people coming together and letting bygones be bygones. And there's some hunters out there that have egos and they get in competitions with other ones, right? Not these guys. I'm saying there are other guys out there that and then it's it would seem like they would butt heads, and then you get together in a place like Huntstock, and we just realize that everybody, at the end of the day, we're there because we love hunting. I'm sitting here because I love hunting, and you're sitting there because you love hunting, and it's something that we all can at least agree on that, right? Oh. We love deer hunting. And
why is that?
You gather. It's primal. It has to be.
What is it? I don't understand. I'm asking the question.
It's primal. It has to be. It's just it gets us closer to nature. We feel like we have to. It's an experience that not a lot of people get to understand.
They don't understand it.
Think about how many billions of people in the world.
8 billion now.
Don't know what it's like to get out there and hunt.
Maybe 7 billion don't know. I don't know.
So I just think, like, I don't even know if Milo and Johnny, have any animosity towards each other there. But, like, if people just got together and it's like, hey, let's break bread and have and let any bygones out there be bygones, and everybody's souls will heal.
I don't know, but I don't think Milo or Johnny have ever had any interaction. Johnny King just called me the other day, as a matter of fact. And we talk every so often. And you know what you should do? You got the perfect venue to get everybody together. Milo, Johnny,
and Dustin Huff.
The most recent Dustin Huff.
Yeah.
What a holy freaking A!
We've been talking about it a little bit behind the scenes. It is. I think I would love to get all three of those hunters together, because Dustin Huff enters the story too, as he killed this great buck in Indiana, and again, he's another guy who's just the average hunter who loves it and lives for it. But he shot lots of little bucks too, just like I have and like you have. I've seen your Vermont pole in there with your little bucks on it.
You recognize that Vermont pole?
Oh, I can tell a Vermont pole when I see one.
Yeah.
Little eat racks all over the place.
A lot of good meat that came out of those deer.
Oh yeah. And some of the best hunts probably you ever had. Your most memorable.
But then you go to Saskatchewan and I've hunted in Saskatchewan for 25, 30 years. And it's a whole different world.
Different, yep.
You pass up, I passed up deer Canada that I ought to give part of my male anatomy for here in Vermont. You know, can I say that?
Yeah, you can.
All right, so.
But Dustin's one of those guys too, right? Just like Johnny and Milo, they lived for hunting. They didn't, ask for these deer. They weren't overly scouting for them or have trail camera pictures. I think all these guys, it was the first time they'd seen those deer with a gun in their hands when they ended up shooting.
As far as I know, that's
right?
the case, yeah.
And Dustin's a great guy. I've been getting to know him, and I met him at the Indiana Archery Trade Show.
Oh.
And he had his buck there, and his buck is another. Just wait till you see that one in person. I mean, it does look similar to this one.
It's got the mass.
It's mass,
but shape different.
Very perfectly, very symmetrical too, which is how you get the Boone and Crockett score so high. And so now that's the number one typical whitetail ever shot in the U.S.
Officially accepted
Boone
by
and Crockett. Yep. And so still the number one typical in the world, officially accepted by Boone and Crockett. Dustin's is the U.S. and here's Johnny in the middle.
Yeah,
where
it's a little sore spot for me, kind of, but not sore spot. I'm glad for Dustin. I don't know him, never talked to him, but I'm glad for him.
He's a really, really great guy.
I'm sure he is.
As all of these guys are.
It's interesting, not to get religious, but how, I wouldn't say God picks people to be their caretakers. Maybe that's not fair to say it that way. I don't know. But it's interesting how, of all TV personalities and professional people out there, none of them have come close to this stature.
Yeah.
Now you can get big deer non-typicals bigger than this, bone-wise, but the perfect typical is more rare than a big non-typical.
Yeah, it's not really something you can work towards. Where Michael Jordan can get the scoring title because it's the effort that he puts in will get there. But no matter how good a hunter you are, you still have to find the deer. The deer has to be able to get that way and hide from all the other hunters for that long. And you just can't aspire to do it and then do it. Really, it seems like it happens to you.
It did, just like it happened to either one of these guys, and Dustin more recently.
Yep.
That deer in Indiana, did other people see that deer before? I don't know, probably.
Yeah, there were a couple guys that reached out to him after and said, wow. And he had 8 mile range. He was 8 miles away, a guy was hunting him.
Yeah.
And he might have just taken a long loop and he was maybe his range was over 8 miles away, but the day Dustin shot him, he was 8 miles from where that guy who was hardcore hunting him was hunting him.
What's 8 miles for a big deer like that compared to a human in a pickup truck going from Massachusetts to Vermont?
Yeah.
Like you came from Mass this morning.
Yeah.
Hundreds of miles away in a couple hours. Actually, you could have got here a little quicker too, couldn't you?
I got pulled over. That was part of the problem. I've been driving in Massachusetts for 12 years and never been pulled over. And I think about it all the time. And
you come to Vermont.
I don't know if it's the police there just have better stuff to do or what, but I was going a little too hot coming in here to Wallingford, and I should have known because I grew up around here. And he was sitting right where Tift used to always sit, same spot. Tift would pull over so many people on that spot, and he couldn't resist pulling me over. I was going 20 over in a new Tundra with Massachusetts license plates.
Oh yeah, man! It's like you had Christmas tree lights on your vehicle, probably. Yeah. Well, I hope someday that. I don't know you, just for disclosure. I never met you before, and I don't know you that much, but you appear to be quite a aggressive, hardworking, go-getter guy, putting together Huntstock like last year, again this year. I hope someday it works out where you might be able to get all these guys together. That would be phenomenal to be able to do it if it's possible. Assuming everybody's available, willing, and healthy.
Yeah.
And just for hunters that care. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that know these names, and there's even more guys that don't know them. So, but I mean, if you got three of those three guys on the stage, oh my God!
I just think for the hunting world, right, and the hunting industry, it would be a nice reset, soul healing kind of, we call it Huntstock because it was inspired by, Woodstock, the Woodstock for hunters, people coming together, common purpose, just enjoying themselves, and that's what it turned out to be last year. And I feel like if everybody could see that, hey, we're all just admitting we love to hunt. I don't care. There's no animosity here. There's no animosity there. There's no, you know what I mean?
I know exactly
with Dustin coming into, and he's told me there's just people think he poached it. People say it. He was a Nashville resident and he wasn't an Indiana resident, and then people give him shit because it's a crossbow, and man, if he just had a bow in his hand, then he would have had the bow record. And it's like, guys, no, we just love to hunt. And
yeah, it's unfortunate that we as hunters who love to hunt from different generations, there's that element of what you're describing that some people, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's on social media or what, come up with these ideas or theories or comments that are unfounded and make no sense. We have to live with that element. So what you're doing, I think, is excellent to try to disprove that or quell that or get rid of that with Huntstock.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when you think about hunting, what it was like back, say, in the Larry Benoit days, or more recently, Lanny's days, or coming up, younger guys today, everybody's got a trail camera and an iPhone with them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's hunting today. That's fine. It doesn't take away from your heart what you want to do.
Yep.
You're hunting.
Yep.
It's just a different way than it used to be.
Yep.
So, I think, I'm not trying to promote Huntstock here, but I don't mind doing it if it helps or whatever. But getting people together from different generations is very important, I think. And you got to be able to accept the fact that everything in the world changes.
Yep.
Whether it's hunting or sports or politics or weather, or the world doesn't stay the same, and we're all different, kind of. But still, you have that love of hunting that remains constant.
Yeah.
Whether you're a young Isaac Young, 26 years old, or you 36, or me 75, it's all the same.
That's the thread that ties us all together is the love for hunting, right?
And yes, definitely. Oh, I don't know. Are we getting off track too much?
No.
Not talking enough about Johnny or whatever? Or?
No.
Okay.
Well, if you want to tell more about the Johnny story.
Well, there's probably not much more that can be said.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, I will say, I feel that he got the short stick of the whole thing. He didn't get to be able, he probably didn't want to. Talking to me just the other day, he sounds the same way as he did 15 years ago.
Yeah, you can tell I'm sure he would have liked to have the...
Well, at least have the opportunity to be the world record holder.
Yeah.
Who knows where his life would have been or what it would have been, but he didn't have that chance, which is unfortunate. Now, there are a few people in the country, I will admit, that will go to their grave thinking that point's abnormal or wasn't scored right or the rule got changed after. But, deer like these are so rare. I mean, unfreaking believable. I look at that. Here's the thing that I've said. These deer look so different from each other. So the score sheet is what really determines ranking. It's not looks. And that's what you have to go by, is the score and the rules that apply for that measuring. And, you know, I'm not interpreting. I read the rules and interpreted them. Measuring a Hansen buck there was nothing difficult about either one of these, you know. Hell, I've measured some deer, Tony Fulton's deer from Mississippi, non-typical.
I don't know how you measured that one.
Took 7 hours, over 300 inches. Measured Brian Butcher's deer here last year from Kansas. That was another 6-7 hour deer. What did I wind up? 328, I think, for Northeast Big Buck Club. You know, some of these deer are just incredible, trying to determine what's the beam, what's the typical point. You know, these are easy, really.
Yeah.
You know. But, see, they're big typicals. The difference is that one has no abnormals at all. This one has 2 abnormal points.
Two little ones, yeah.
You know, but anyways, and you can't go by the taxidermy work because these were both done by 2 different people. That's a better looking job there. It's a newer cape.
LaJoy, and the antlers are LaJoy, right?
Yeah.
Is this LaJoy?
Pete mounted that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't do the antlers on this.
No, he did not. No. Jay Fish gave me those antlers. Here's the other thing. Both of these racks were given to me. You know, they sell for $3,000 a piece, just the racks alone, or more. I don't even know. I don't buy them or anything. And the capes are from deer I shot in Saskatchewan. That's a 2015. This is prior to 2009. So, but I mean, these capes come from 250-pound plus deer or whatever they were.
Yeah, well, this one, you can tell he's got a... It must just be the form they put
Well,
on.
the forms and, you know, how much they stretch them and all, and...
he was a big... That deer must have weighed a good amount.
Johnny's deer? Or
the cape.
Oh, the deer, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the antlers are in that room over there. They got white duct tape over the skull plate. It says 2015. White duct tape of all things, yeah. So there you have it. We'll probably bored the pants out of everybody watching this today, huh? Or 2. Are you going to do this in 2 different segments or what?
Yeah, we might. 2 segments, maybe 3. We'll see what happens.
You want me to give you a list of people who I think you should do podcasts with?
Yeah.
I can do that off camera after if you want.
Yeah.
But how big's your budget?
I don't have budgets on the podcast. That's the thing with getting all these guys together. I know, they're all tremendous deer, and the industry is there. There was an industry. It changes too from him to Dustin now. I talk with Dustin a lot, and he struggles to monetize his deer. In the same way that back in the day that was the thing. You could monetize it. Milo might have been the first one really to kind of start that, taking it to shows, getting paid for it. It's a little bit of that same thing that we were talking about earlier with the news cycle refreshes so fast these days.
Yeah.
That,
no one concentrates on any one thing for any length of time.
Yep.
Are we still on film, by the way? Or what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if it was, I could start swearing my normal talk now or what. But, no, in case anybody's wondering, can we explain these 2 pictures?
Yeah.
So this is a picture of Jim Jordan with what was the world record typical
For
Jordan
many years
from
until
Wisconsin.
Yep.
And that picture was taken when Jordan was alive, but the deer at that point when he was holding it wasn't recognized as the world record back then. And then the picture next to it is a picture of John Breen. I don't know if your camera will pick that up or you can get
it will.
others after. With his deer, the Breen buck was the world record for one time. And that was in Funkley, Minnesota. And I always look at that picture. He's got his whole rifle with him. The deer's laying on the ground, wood pile in the back. And that wood pile was probably done by all hand-sawed wood. I don't know if there was any chainsaws back in 1918, was there?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Anyways.
Giant buck.
Oh, yeah. And the interesting thing is Chuck Arnold, who lives in British Columbia that I was telling you about earlier, owned both of those deer at one time. So I have pictures in that room over there if you want to look at them later of visiting Chuck when he lived in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I got pictures holding both of those deer, one in one hand, one in the other. Those same deer from those pictures. Not replicas, the real deer.
Does he live near Whistler by any chance?
Ski area?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I've been there once, and I want to go back there again because it's just a gorgeous area there. Flying to Vancouver and drive up the coast to Whistler was the coolest drive I've ever seen.
Kelowna, that's where he lives.
Oh, Kelowna. Yeah.
You know where that is or heard of it?
Yeah. Heard of it.
Yeah. Chuck used to be a dentist in Nashua, New Hampshire. And long story. Now he's in British Columbia, but he'd be very interesting to talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some of the best antlers. Well, he had the Jordan buck and the green buck at the same time.
Yep.
You know, and others we can get into. But if you want to do podcasts on antler collectors, there's where you would start right there. You know. But all right. So how are we doing?
We're doing good. But talking about the budget thing, the one thing I wanted to say is I know it might cost a lot of money to get these guys all to get together, or maybe it won't. I don't know. Like you said, Milo's situation right now, health-wise, even if it is possible, I hope that he's in really good health. And but what I need to do is contacted Dustin. Dustin said that he would be up for it, and you know, there's a price to get him to come up. And Johnny said that he, you know, would be open to talking about it, right? Yeah. So I need to figure out what that total budget is and then find sponsors to raise the money from sponsors. So if people are watching this and they would like to see that happen and you're running a company's budget or something, so we need to raise that money that is enough to pay all these guys what they deserve, get them all into one spot, and then heal the hunting industry.
So I got a question for you. Would anybody be watching this that may be interested in being a sponsor for getting these world record guys together?
That's what I mean.
You know, if someone owns a car dealership or something.
Yep.
That has a lot of money they're mad at.
Yeah, because the idea is to get everybody on a stage and do a panel where we open the discussion up, and it's like what we're doing here, but it's the guys with these three big bucks all sitting next to each other, and I don't know if it would be me or somebody else, you know, moderating it and just keeping it going, but, you know, have all those guys at the end of the day. The energy in there will be great. They're going to all shake hands. They're going to be taking pictures together, arms around each other. It's like, hey guys, for anybody out there who thinks there's any animosity, there isn't. Look at these guys all coming together, admitting all these deer are amazing specimens, and we just love hunting. Can we just drop any of whatever's out there in the ether, right?
And I don't think that exists amongst these.
Yeah, guys. And I'm not saying it even does. But
I think it's, what's the word, animosity, I hate to use that, might exist amongst people with a lower level.
In the orbit, yeah.
You know, and it's human nature to be suspicious or jealous or not jealous. I always say I don't want to ever be jealous or envious. I want to be glad for somebody. How's that?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
But that panel discussion, if we can get it going, that's where the sponsor will be, the entire discussion is brought to you by them, made possible by them, so you get a lot of good impressions from that. And I just I don't want to make any money off it. I want to get the guys there and not have my show fold from adding all those expenses. But a sponsor.
That would be, in my opinion, one of the greatest assembly of 300s ever together. You know, if you get those three guys together.
And you're not mentioning that Lanny Benoit will be there, and Hal Blood, and Rick Labby, and all these tremendous hunters are already coming to Huntstock. Joe Donito and Jim Massett, and the list goes on and on. It's already might be the greatest assembly of hunters ever, but if you can get these three guys.
Well, look, yeah. So these three guys are your average Joes. The other guys you talked about are more of the lifetime professionals.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I don't know if that's the right word.
Something like that. Yeah, but the ones who may consider themselves actually, and these guys might even say too that those guys are better if there's a way to say they're better hunters, they're because every single year they kill a big mature buck or whatever, right? Whatever that may be. I'm not trying to say they are better hunters, but these guys are guys like me and you that love to hunt, that had a deer that come by and had a lot of luck to do with it. Guys like Lanny and Larry and Hal, Blood, those guys get those big bucks not out of luck. There has to be sometimes the timing has to line up, but it's because they dedicate every waking hour.
They're good at what they do.
Yeah, every waking hour into hunting and being in the woods.
Yeah.
But
well, it's been a lot of fun.
It has been. Before we end it, let's tell people about the Larry Benoit and Family Day that you're putting together. And
all right. So you know that I'm trying to organize, or have been for the past 2 months, organizing a Larry Benoit and Family Celebration Day, September 24th of this year, 23, in Rutland, Vermont, at the Rutland Rec Center. And the 24th was picked because that was Larry Benoit's birthday. He would have been 99 this year. So I got a lot of guest speakers coming. I'm hoping to get 1,000 people there.
Yep.
It's going to be very low admission price.
So the old College of St. Joseph Gymnasium,
right? The old College of
right?
St. Joseph Gymnasium.
Okay.
The city of Rutland bought that, and that's their headquarters for their rec center.
Yep.
So we're going to have, hopefully, some unique vendors. Already got some lined up. Probably, 15, 20 vendors, 10 or 12 speakers. And I'm inviting everybody that has a Benoit knife or book to bring them. And if you have a green plaid coat that was famous for the Benoits, or beagle wear, which was what they had towards the end, to wear that.
That'll be awesome.
And at the end of the day, my vision is, in this gymnasium, everybody's going to be sitting on the bleacher seats. We're going to take a gigantic group photo of everybody holding their knives or their book up, dressed in their coats.
That would be so awesome.
So
that would be great.
And it's going to be like nobody's trying to make money, nobody's trying to sell anything. It's just trying to get a bunch of guys together, have a good time in September. So
it's a non-profit, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's, if we make some money out of it, I say it'll go to a couple of Camp Tecumseh in Vermont. That's one of Lanny's favorite charities.
Yep.
And there's a few other things I had in mind, but I don't know how this is going to turn out, how many people are going to want to come. A lot of stuff I don't know.
Well, and you're only going to sell 1,000. There's a capacity, right?
Well, yeah, there's a fire marshal capacity, and I don't want to exceed it or even come close to it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to advertise it so far as the first 1,000 that respond.
Yep.
We'll try to have 800 tickets online and a couple hundred to be available at the door or through mail here. So
is the website up yet where they can get tickets?
Not yet. Maybe by June 1st. I'm working with the Rutland Rec Department. They're going to sell tickets online for this event. You can buy them online.
I'm sure when it goes up, you're going to hear about it.
Well, yeah.
And I'll make a post for it, and I'll update the description in this YouTube under there when it's ready. You'll be able to click that link right on this video to get your tickets if you want to do that.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
I got to confess to you or anybody watching this, I'm very, very, what's the word? Not old-fashioned. Yeah, old-fashioned. I'm lazy when it comes to technology. So I don't know how it all works. All I know is what I want to do. I want to get 1,000 people together.
Yep.
Have a good Sunday afternoon. Yep. September 24th is a Sunday.
And celebrate the Benoits.
Celebrate Benoit family. Larry and the family and the boys. And Lanny's going to be there. And, we're going to have a lot of Larry Benoit memorabilia for people to see. Going to have a bunch of their mounted heads on display. Hopefully some guns, rifles that Larry had. A lot of other memorabilia that they've had. Just for people to see that have never had a chance to visit the house in Duxbury. That was a museum in itself. Just an amazing thing.
Yep.
So, and you know Lanny well, so you get an idea from that. But, you know, I'm hoping to get, well, the mount of Larry's father's deer, Leo. That was a 170-inch typical deer that Leo shot years ago. And then the deer that's on the cover of Larry's book, How to Bag the Biggest Buck of Your Life. Hopefully we'll have that mount there for people to see. And then I'm going to hopefully try to get a mount of one of the better ones from Shane and Lane and some from Lanny and have about a half a dozen or so good mounts there. You know?
Yep.
And there's going to be new CDs available, I understand.
Yep.
His new DVDs, they're reprinting all the old DVDs.
Yeah.
That had people have been asking for a long time, and those are going to be available at Huntstock the first.
Oh yes.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
The first time to the public, so people are getting tickets to go down there and get those DVDs, and then they're going to realize there's a pretty good show going on too. And you can get those DVDs at woodmanarms.com if they don't sell out at Huntstock, and then if they do sell out, I think they're gonna maybe reprint some more. Or he's got all the old footage from Tom Blaze too, that a lot of unseen stuff that I think their plan is to put some of that out in the future too.
Tom Blaze called me the other night from Montana. Tom, for anybody who doesn't know, was the original videographer, filmer for the Benoits. And we talked for an hour and 45 minutes.
With you? I don't believe that.
Finally, I had to go. I said, that's it. I got to go get something to drink. I'm not water.
Yeah.
And, but he was telling me that there is something nobody saw probably. It's what they call the Super Bowl video. Did you hear about that?
Well, Lanny talked about it on our podcast that he in the halftime of the Super Bowl they did a segment on those guys. And
And Tom told me he thought that film was still in a box upstairs in Larry's house in Duxbury. So my plan is hopefully to go over there with Lanny sometime, to see if we can dig some of that stuff up.
Yeah.
And maybe run that on a loop at the show, the Larry Benoit deal, or you could do it at Huntstock, and it was done by, I guess, cameramen that were produced by ABC or whatever.
Yeah.
And they didn't shoot any deer on it. They were just following around, I guess.
Lanny said that those cameramen couldn't keep up, and so Lanny had to strap the battery pack on for him, and he was carrying all kinds of stuff for him because they were dragging feet.
Yeah, I can see Lanny being young, in shape, whippersnapper back then, saying, "Come on, you pansy asses, let's get going here," But so that would be interesting to get some of that old video like that. Of when they were younger looking and all, and there's a lot of things we can do. It's a lot of fun. All right, I got to get something to drink here. I got to get some water.
Me too. So look out for the Larry Benoit and Family Day, Rutland, Vermont. The date is, again,
September 24th.
September 24th.
2023.
You'll be able to get tickets at the link in the YouTube, and I'll update that as soon as it's live. And then there sounds like there will be a couple hundred tickets available at the door. So
I'm going to try to keep a couple hundred available. I'm going to have some available at the door and sell some by mail, because there's a bunch of old guys out there like me that don't use computers or anything, use the mail. So... And the entry for the day is going to be $12, by the way. Not going to break the bank.
No.
And we're going to have, hopefully, we're going to have a bunch of free door prizes. And the main door prize, I don't know if I told you this or not.
I don't think so.
Is going to be an 8-point rack that Larry Benoit shot from the state of Maine.
That's awesome.
Lanny's in charge of that, getting that.
Yep.
So... And that's going to be a free door prize, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we're going to also, I think, try to do an auction or a raffle
of
a hunt with Lanny Benoit.
Yep.
up in Maine. So details got to still be worked out.
Yeah, cool.
To raise money for the Camp to Comta, possibly.
Cool.
And so this is a gamble. You know what gambling is like, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many people will show up. I don't know what the costs or expenses are going to be. I have a pretty good idea. I think if things go okay, we should be okay, but I can't convince my wife of that yet.
They can get expensive. They can.
You know. Yeah.
But, all right, well, we'll see you guys there. And then if you want to go to Huntstock, you can go to huntstockevents.com and get your tickets there. And if anybody's watching that wouldn't mind being a sponsor of a panel with, I was thinking it could be, what was it, Hansen, Huff, and King. Sounds really good together, right?
Hansen, Huff, and King, HHG.
Hansen,
no, HHK.
Hansen, Huff, and King panel.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah.
Reach out to me. huntsuburbia@gmail.com is my email, or text me or whatever. I'm going to give my phone out. I've never done that before, but 802-353-5205. That's my phone number.
You're going to say that again slower.
You can send me a text. I might edit that out. I'm just kidding. Still got the 802 number.
Well, you know what would be good is if somebody watching this owns a big Ford or Chevy GMC dealership.
Yep. You
could have a truck right there.
Yep.
And have all three mounts sitting in the back of a pickup, and then a stage right by there.
Yep.
All kinds of things going to be done.
I've sponsorship is what I did for a living for many years, and the Huntstock needs a big truck sponsor anyway. I've been meaning most of the sponsors, pretty much every sponsor there is a hunting specific related sponsor, right?
Yeah,
and I don't want non-related, sponsors
well,
on site. But trucks is something truck is related, so that would be completely fine.
Yeah.
And and if there's somebody like whatever, a big insurance agency or something that's watching this, if you want to sponsor the panel, that's fine. As long as you're not there, in person just trying to pull people in to talk about insurance policies. They don't go to the show for that. But as an ancillary, logo impressions, sure, I'd give Geico or Progressive Insurance to sponsor the panel. But anyway, you gotta be related to hunting in some way so that it doesn't feel like you're getting hard sold on something. You know.
Well, all you gotta do is find someone who's got a lot of money they're mad at. That's all.
Yeah.
How's that? But I mean...
And I don't know. I don't think it'll be super expensive to get everybody there. Probably $30,000 will do it.
Oh, God.
Right?
I don't...
To some sponsors out there, that's a drop in the bucket of what their budget is.
Yeah,
so.
I think that would more than cover. I would think. I don't know. All depends what people want to get, what it's worth. The thing that
I tell you what, the video out of it that will come out of it would get hundreds of thousands of views, maybe millions on YouTube. I mean, I think it would be really big. So for the sponsor who's used to buying media packages, 1 million eyeballs, that's worth it as well for the sponsor. So
you'd get eyeballs from not only the Northeast but all over North America, I think, right?
Yeah.
So,
anyways, let's leave them with that.
Okay.
All right. It has been great. Been a pleasure.
Been my pleasure.
We're gonna have a many more conversations, I'm sure.
All right.
And little puppy did really well.
She didn't say Pete the whole time because I was holding her.
What's her name for the
this
listeners?
Is Peanut, by the way.
Peanut,
any of you guys? Peanut's 4 pounds. She's a bear dog. I train her for tracking bears. Right, Peanut?
4-pounder.
You good little beautiful girl. Yes.
Thanks again.
All right.